For more on all this, I want to talk about what the first phase of this trade deal means to American business. Joining us right now is somebody who is impacted by all of this, Nick Pinchuk. He is the chairman and CEO of Snap-on, which is manufacturing facilities in 11 U.S. states and 5 facilities in China.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes.
Thanks for being here. So,
pleasure to be here.
What's your takeaway thus far?
Well, I think it's positive. You know, it's better than a poking the eye with a sharp stick, for sure, you know. And I think this is it. You know, when you're looking at this, it's kind of like a commercial deal. It progressed like, I think, at least some of us expected. You know, October 1st, the celebration was over. October 11th, the president announces that there's a phase 1. It takes a couple months to do the deal, and they announce a deal which seems to be encouraging. National Association of Manufacturers says really positive things about it. Okay, so you look, though, there are these elements that seem to still have a question mark next to them. So I'm thinking, for example, this agricultural buy. Yes. $50 billion. Is it $50 billion? Is it $40 billion? Well, it was $24 billion last year. So
does it happen at all, right? I mean, I think these are sort of real questions. And my question to you is, how does that impact business?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think one is the specifics of the tariffs still have to be understood. You know, there's a pullback in tariffs, and I think that's positive for business. Certainly, List 4B, which is about $120 billion worth of business, and a lot of that was power tools and so on. There's no tariffs on those. The reduction of the 120 in List 4A from 15 to 7 is another positive. And there's been, I think, companies over time have been adjusting their supply chain so they're not associated with this.
Directly on your business, after you read this on Friday, what phone calls did you make and what did you say about this?
We didn't make any phone calls because we weren't that troubled by the tariffs necessarily. You know, from our perspective, we weren't necessarily troubled by the tariffs. I did talk to the National Association of Manufacturers, who was ecstatic about it. Their membership is very positive, and it's like this. I think, you know, you could have looked at the progress of the negotiations, and you could have said, some people were saying that this is going to be a permanent dislocation between China and the United States, and the stock prices and many of the forecasts for companies are based on being able to participate in that market. And this kind of says, I think, number one is we're cooling down on the tariffs, and the Chinese, the South China Morning Post over the weekend, the Straits Times also talked about the Chinese actually acknowledge that they're talking about IP, trade secrets, you know, things like patent linkage, that are positive in terms of creating an even playing field, which is what the manufacturers always wanted.
Okay, so Nick, let me ask you to be, if you could, a little bit more precise. So there's 2 impacts. There's what it does to prices and profitability in the short term.
Yes.
And secondly, how it fundamentally changes business behavior.
Yes.
Do you believe the positive reaction of business that you referred to will mean that people will now invest more, that the uncertainty has been lifted, or are they going to continue waiting and take the benefits on the price side?
Lifted is a binary statement, right? I think this makes it more positive for manufacturers.
But will they change their behavior?
I think they will. I think each time you evaluate an investment, you look at the current situation. And I would say the current situation looks like we're making progress. The administration said, you know, we're going to divorce commercial activity in the market with strategic activity. And I think this agreement really demonstrates that. The administration censored the China over Hong Kong, a strategic action associated with ideology, our idea about the rights of the individual, rights of individuals, we protect them. But at the same time, we did a commercial deal. Phase 1 deal was agreed to. And I think this in itself, ideologically, is very important. And I do believe the fact that the administration is able to do that is a very encouraging sign to businessmen. And therefore, their confidence in the ability to access the Chinese market and consider it a source or a place to invest has increased over this. Certainly, the National Association of Manufacturers, who's been involved with this deal from the beginning, says so. They called it a watershed or a victory for manufacturing.
You don't think... I don't know if you read, there was a speech that Hank Paulson gave about 2 weeks ago. He said, even if a deal is reached, and you probably saw the speech. You were actually there.
No, I was not there, but I saw it.
And effectively what he was saying was, even if a deal is reached, and he was, by the way, praising the deal, I believe, on Friday in some comments, that the sort of larger structural war between the U.S. and China would continue and may even get worse.
Yes, but that's exactly the point about this deal, I think, is that we can make progress commercially, open the market, at least make progress.
You're making the argument that there was a bigger and better opportunity to invest in China directly.
What I meant is that your feelings about China, your confidence about investing in China, I think goes up based on this deal. I think there can be no other conclusion. I mean, the question in debate is how far are we going and how much does that
No, but the other conclusion is it's in both sides' short-term interest to call a truce. Not in their longer-term interest, in their short-term interest. And that truce is going to be used for reinforcing resilience to decoupling as opposed to a stepping stone to something more comprehensive.
Well, yes,
that's the argument.
Yes, if you assume that you can't decouple commercial interests with long-term ideological issues. And I think this demonstrates that a little bit. I mean, we're never going to make China America. The Chinese are at their base ideologically communitarian. When they lived on farms, 50 people lived in the same village using the same water and walked to their farms. In America, we lived individually on our farms. So we believe the rights of the individual are ascendant. They believe the rights of the community are ascendant. Therefore, we're never going to make them the same. Their economy is based on subsidies with state-owned industry, and it takes time for them to move away from this. I view this as a positive, and I think the National Association of Manufacturers does as well. Manufacturers, I think, around the country will look at this and say, well, maybe the tariffs aren't favorable for me. For example, if you make power tools in the United States, this isn't necessarily as positive as it might have been. It would have been better to put tariffs on power tools from China. But in general, I think it's viewed as a positive because the underpinning of strategic plans, the underpinning of stock prices in America for manufacturing companies, I think are based to some extent on companies in the U.S.'s ability to access those $1.2 billion.
You seem skeptical.
Yeah, I totally am. I agree with him on the short term, but I don't agree with him on the longer term. I think past November, we're going to be back in a trade war with the risk of it becoming trade war, investment war, and currency war.
Well, you might be right. I just came back from China. I've been to China twice since October, and I can tell you that the censor of the Chinese over Hong Kong did not go down well with the government or with the people on the street in China or in Singapore. So is that possibility for dislocation in the future. You could be right. I could be right. I think I'm right.